Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and to you. We are loaded up today. We'll spend plenty of time talking some Huskers, baseball and football, oh my, with Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch will be with us in about 20 minutes or so. The just monster clash at Southwest tonight for girls basketball. Number 4, Lincoln Southwest. Number 2, Lincoln High. And we'll talk with head coach for Lincoln Southwest, Tim Barada. With us this first hour, Andy Markowski, to talk some basketball, some Husker women at 5. And then a Tuesday with Kaz, Rick Kaczenski with us in hour 2. Numbers to get in can join us, 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. You can email the show, Chris at HailVarsity.com, and find us on Twitter. Give us a follow at Schmidt_radio, and also at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. So that's the plan. Plenty of thoughts here. We're inching closer and closer to spring football. A new offer out for Flores of Gretna, Oklahoma State, and Tim Rattay on him. That's a second Big 12 offer for a product just up the road in Gretna. Something to keep an eye on. That's potentially a future quarterback in D1. The news today about the former quarterback in Lincoln, that's Adrian Martinez, and we talk quite a bit about all of our friends along the Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Media Partnership, the platform, the podcasts that Hurrdat has. Incredible. We're blessed to be a part of it. Schick and Nick Bosch Show, Greg Smith's podcast, The Straight Up Breakdown, of course, Brandon Vogel, Aaron Sorensen, Jacob Padilla. I mean, the list goes on. Derek Peterson. So it's awesome. And then to have Athletes Unfiltered, a part of that podcast family, really cool. And Adrian able to drop his new pod the last 24 hours or so. There was a little bit of a tease last week, but a lot revealed, Elijah, in Adrian's podcast. The full extent of the jaw injury and reasons for leaving Nebraska. Pretty interesting for sure. And let's hear a little snippet from Adrian and the story of what happened behind the scenes. So this is Adrian post, I should say, right after that shot he took to the jaw with the Michigan State safety coming up. Here's Adrian with his Athletes Unfiltered podcast.
My jaw then got displaced back and this way. So it was like this. It was back in my mouth. And we ran back to our locker room, and I had to go in and get an x-ray. And there was some Michigan State technician there, and I had to fill out paperwork. I'm in my full gear. And she's like, can you write your name? Is this actually happening? We have a game. We need to go. This needs to happen fast. She was in no rush, of course. So I fill out this paperwork, and they get me on here, and I have my pads on, and they take the pictures, and it's like, well, we can't really see anything. I'm like, oh, that's surprising. My shoulder pad was debatably in the way of the x-ray. And I'm like, you know what? I need to get back out there. I feel like I've been in here for an hour, and it turned out to be one possession, I think. And so I run back out there, and they're kind of like, are you good to go? Are you feeling okay? And I'm like, honestly, not really, but let's go, let's rock. Let's make this happen. We have to win this game.
Adrian Martinez. Elijah, we've been stuck at different spots in our life where maybe it's a railroad crossing on 33rd and Cornhusker. Maybe it's at the checkout line at the grocery store. Maybe it's at the DMV. Maybe you're trying to mail a package at customer service. Whatever the case, but neither of us have been stuck in an X-ray room with a tech in the bowels of East Lansing. At least I don't think you have.
No, I mean, the closest I can come is whenever you got, like, the doctor's appointment at 4, and you're in there, like, 3:45, right on time. They get you in the room at 4, and the doctor doesn't even come and see you until 5. And it's like, what are you even doing, man? Like, that's the closest I've been, but never in the middle of a football game.
Can you believe what... How you feeling? My jaw is broken, I think. But let's go. Let's go. But we've all been there, but just not in the moments of a waning first quarter. We've all experienced the, I need you to go now. And quite honestly, most times it's my fault. Like, if I'm running late, someone will be going 4 miles under the speed limit or 14 miles under the speed limit. And I don't just run into one. There's two. So both lanes are blocked. And it's my fault for not getting up earlier or, being more proactive with getting to where I need to go. But that was a pretty good little anecdote from Adrian after the hit and the ability to get back on the field, because it took him a while when he left. I remember watching the Michigan State with you guys back on the patio, and we're like, where's Adrian? Where's Adrian? And then he comes out, and the guy makes one of the most incredible get-out-of-danger runs, ball on the turf to balance himself, and he's gone 50 yards. And that game is still like top 3 painful all time. So, okay, we've gotten the lowdown on note to self. If you get hurt at Michigan State, you'll have to fill out paperwork.
I think the most important, or not the most important, the most impressive thing here is, like, if whenever you get hurt playing sports, like, the adrenaline rush is there for 5-10 minutes after the injury, but he was back in the locker room for 15 minutes, which means the adrenaline wore off from a broken jaw, and then he still goes back to the sideline and goes, get me back out. Like, I went to the dentist this morning, and my mouth is still sore. Like, I'm probably going to be on the unlimited participation for board opping your high school game tonight because my mouth is still so sore, and he out there with a broken jaw. Like, that's Warriors mentality right there.
Well, let's talk about the dental situation. When it came to Adrian and his jaw, there was Nebraska doctors that consulted with people at the Mayo Clinic, very reputable, also Vanderbilt, very reputable, to arrive at that ultimate decision. And the decision was to put a rubber band in his mouth and shut it. And they used that instead of wiring the jaw shut. This kid did everything in his power to stay and play. The process for that rubber band, instead of wiring the jaw shut, 6 screws drilled into his gums so they could attach the rubber bands. So check out the Athletes Unfiltered pod through Hurrdat Media with Adrian. And listen, lidocaine, screws drilled in just so they could have a rubber band in there. And they had to drill between the teeth so they didn't hit the roots, and then get it retightened every week. He went out of his way to act normal and do the podium sessions Mondays after the game. His jaw breakage displaced a bone, so his mouth still doesn't open or close the way it did pre-injury. What kind of ticked Adrian off was the confirmation. Scott Frost confirmed the break November 6th after the Ohio State loss. Felt comfortable saying that Yeah, Adrian's got a busted-up jaw. They had a bye week after Ohio State. That timeline is where Adrian would be fully healed, but the full fusion of his jaw back into place taking 5 to 6 months. And he still has to keep eyes on it to this moment in time. Gus Johnson mentioned it during the broadcast, and that was confirmed that, the jaw was broken this season. That bothered Adrian. And, Adrian's telling his experience in Lincoln. And, Elijah, we get to the part of Adrian deciding to leave Nebraska. And with his labrum tear, it's a situation of, listen, with the injury, good luck with the NFL, because you're not going to be 100%. What's going to be best? The last part about the broken jaw is that, family and friends had to hear from the broadcast that he had a broken jaw. But he wanted to be the one that told that story. You ever had a steak in a blender?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
Simply put, no.
He did. That's how he kept his weight on. God bless him. So we get to the part here of Nebraska. Why leave Nebraska? And he checked with some folks he trusted. He wanted perspective on his game, where and what he needed to improve upon. Got different opinions. And the thought was this: proving himself in a new space in a different offense that can show some of his skills that maybe weren't being shown at Nebraska was the impetus for moving on. Less to do with what Nebraska was doing or not doing. So I don't know that it was necessarily an instance of, well, we're going to go to the portal and good luck, winning your job back. Frost tried to convince him to stay. Frost publicly said before the season ended he hoped that the senior day against Iowa wasn't truly a senior day, but it was the best decision for Adrian, he feels, to go somewhere else. And I know we're spending time on the guy who's down at K-State, and Nebraska's moved forward and Adrian's moved forward, but you don't really get necessarily that clear a look behind the curtain from a player like Adrian, that people love him. And all the coaches we talked to are like, look, I know there were some turnover issues with him, but man, he's a pretty good quarterback. He's a known quantity. And, we've talked, I don't know how many times since the season's ended about, what can Nebraska do to be better on the offensive line? What can Nebraska do to get a better run game? What can Nebraska do to not be so quarterback dependent? And really, the guy's a warrior, and it's been said 1,000 times, and it'll be said 1,000 times more with what he tried to give Nebraska, Elijah, and he embodied toughness. And listen, he didn't want it out there as an excuse or a reason, and he didn't want to become a target either, because he's we know how vicious the Big Ten is.
Yeah, and we know, I think we said it on this show whenever the season was ending, that Adrian Martinez put it all on the line for Nebraska every single time he's out on the field. I know the wins didn't come. There were some turnovers at inopportune times. The wins didn't come. But Adrian did embody a Nebraska player in terms of laying it all on the line for the team on the side of the helmet, not on the name on the back of the jersey. He laid it all on the line for Nebraska. He loved Nebraska. And I think fans wished that the Adrian Martinez era was different, that there were more wins, there was more success.
Yes.
That's not all on Adrian. That's why we're talking about him right here now, is because fans, for the most part, liked Adrian, appreciate what Adrian brought to the team, and just it wasn't right. It was the old dating adage, right person, wrong time. It kind of felt like that for Adrian Martinez at Nebraska, where he was a good quarterback, and he did lay it all on the line for Nebraska, and it just didn't work out. And I'm wishing him all the best at Kansas State. I hope he turns himself into an NFL prospect. I hope he goes on to find success, because I never had a problem with the effort that Adrian Martinez put in both on and off the field.
No, you said it perfect there. It wasn't an effort thing. It wasn't a will to win thing. The wins just didn't come. It never matched up. But that's kind of his legacy is, had he had a little bit more help, had he been a little bit better himself, I mean, it could have been different because when you identify that quarterback, I mean, this is the quarterback you kept and stuck with over a Joe Burrow. This is the quarterback you kept and stuck with, even though you looked at the McCaffrey era briefly during COVID. And this is a quarterback you wanted to keep and stay with you going into a full fifth year. So there's that. But that's just a little snippet from Adrian Martinez, his podcast, Athletes Unfiltered. And we'll get some of Mitch Sherman's thoughts on this. It's interesting to see the feedback and response on Twitter and social media about this podcast episode. But good stuff from Hurrdat Media and, of course, Adrian Martinez. We'll dive into some Husker baseball with Mitch Sherman and thoughts on the Super Bowl as well. Tim Barada, head coach of the Southwest Girls, coming up in 20 minutes on Hail Varsity. Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price of $29.99. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We'll check in with Andy Markowski. Some thoughts on the Husker women. Monster win against Indiana last night. And high school hoops on our mind. You have number 2 versus number 4 in Class A girls ball tonight. We'll have the call for that on ESPN Lincoln. We welcome in Mitch Sherman with us from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, how was the Super Bowl party?
It was pretty low-key. Got the food out of the way before the game, and was wishing for a little bit of a different finish, but otherwise it was 4 entertaining quarters.
I think there's that sentiment, Mitch, about just a different final. There's a lot of Nebraska fans hoping for Zach and Burrow and, of course, Stanley and Troy Walters, and just not enough O-line protection for Cincy right after that 10-point barrage the first 4 minutes of the second half. But what are you going to remember most about the Super Bowl?
It's tough. It's tough when Aaron Donald and Von Miller are coming at you as an offensive line.
Just a touch.
Yeah, but I do think, since they know where they need to upgrade in the next 6 months or so. I'll remember. I think I'm going to remember it for the Rams as much as the Bengals. You remember the winner, and all through the playoffs, it was the Bengals story and the great story with Joe Burrow and all of the, rekindling the LSU ties just 2 years after the championship in college. And of course, the Zach Taylor element was special for people around here. The great comebacks and, Evan McPherson with ice in his veins. That was all great through the postseason. But at the end of it, for me, it's Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald. Those two are the best at what they do in the whole sport, and we saw it when the money was on the line at the end.
Mitch, gonna switch gears and get your reaction to Adrian Martinez, his podcast, Athletes Unfiltered, and just how raw and real his latest episode is, not only with the job, but his reasonings for leaving Nebraska. I know both parties had moved on. But it's been pretty newsworthy today to have an athlete with that stage, and it's not new. I mean, athletes have shows or podcasts, and that's kind of a new normal. But this was a really in-depth look behind the curtain with Adrian's last season.
Yeah, Adrian and Jeff too, his co-host. They, this is different, I think, than a lot of the, a lot of the content that you see in this NIL era now with players and athletes who have their own platforms. I mean, these guys, they're putting out, they're coming for our jobs. I mean, these guys are really good at what they do and putting out this stuff. And Adrian has a compelling story to tell, and he's a great storyteller. His future is wide open. And, if he doesn't remain on the field in football, he's got all kinds of avenues that he can go off the field. And I think you can listen to that podcast. And it kept my attention for the whole hour plus, in part because it was stuff that I wanted to hear. We haven't heard from Adrian since the Wisconsin game, since that day when he walked off the field and had his arm around Brody Belt. I wrote about that moment in the days after the Wisconsin game. And so to hear him talk about that, and what he was thinking, it was just super compelling stuff. And then to also, if people haven't listened to it, it's really, really interesting. And to hear him, and I think people should hear it because you've watched him for 4 years, lay it on the line for Nebraska. And to just say, hey, we've all moved on, it's time to turn the page, without giving him the opportunity to, or without giving yourself the opportunity to hear what he has to say in that hour. I think I think it's a disservice to Adrian because of all that he sacrificed. To listen to him talk about the situation with his jaw against Michigan State and going back and getting the x-rays and, him remembering the details in the locker room that day. And, he wore a mask that post game after the loss, the overtime loss. Otherwise, everyone would have known what was going on because his jaw was like twice the size that it should have been. So it was, it was kind of out there for us at the time if we would have been a little bit more like detectives as media in this state. But, I think everybody knew that he was dealing with something, and the jaw was certainly, a possibility that was on the minds of people. But to hear the decision that he had to make after that game and to talk about the Minnesota game down the road and, the halftime against Wisconsin and his choice to leave in December. It's all really, really interesting stuff. And I commend Adrian for all that he gave to Nebraska and then for going out and telling his story the way that he did in that episode.
Mitch, was there any part of the episode where you tried to read in between the lines on the relationship between Scott Frost and Adrian Martinez? I mean, it sounded like Adrian was pretty upset that Scott Frost went and talked to the Fox crew before the Ohio State game, and then in the Ohio State post game about Adrian's jaw. He kind of wanted that to be something that he would release. Is there anything in that relationship that you heard in the podcast? Mitch, you got us?
Mitch
call may have dropped. I'll get him back on the line.
Well, let's get him back on the line. So we're spending some time here with Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, and the dreaded cell phone call dropped. We'll get him back. We'll get some Mitch's thoughts on Nebraska baseball. Can always find us and stream us ESPNLincoln.com. And dial up at 466-3776, 466-3776-800-825-5865. Mitch, going to bring you back in, bud. Did you hear Elijah's question before the drop or no?
No, I finished talking about Adrian, and then you guys were gone, so I did not.
Okay. Well, real quick, Elijah,
Mitch,
go ahead.
I was just asking you about the relationship between Frost and Adrian. Was there anything in the podcast that you read in between the lines on that relationship from post-game against Ohio State to Adrian's decision to depart Nebraska?
Well, he talked about some of the tensions between himself and Frost. I think that the overriding takeaway that I had about his relationship with Frost is that he leaves on good terms, and that he has a lot of respect for Coach Frost and appreciates everything that he's done, and that they're going to continue to be a part of each other's lives moving forward. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, there were strains on that, and I think that was a factor. He said that was a factor. Maybe not right out, but you could read into what he said and in his comments and understand that it was their relationship and just some of the twists and turns that it has taken were something of a factor in his decision to believe that it was best for both of them that he move on. Yes, the situation after the Ohio State game played into that. And, Adrian was not ready at that moment to stand up there and talk about the jaw injury that had bothered him all season. And they had come to an agreement after the Michigan State game that it would be kept quiet, in part to protect Adrian so that he wasn't targeted in a vulnerable area. And then also just because that has been Scott Frost's policy, not to talk about injuries that were not season ending. So he reversed course there at the podium, Frost did, after the Ohio State game, and I think in part because he knew that it got out on TV in that game when Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt talked about it during the broadcast. But Adrian was caught off guard, and I think that's something that still sits with him now because he's not that far removed from it. I don't believe that it's going to create a lifelong rift between the two of them. But you coach someone that long, you play for someone as long as Adrian did, and go through all that they did together. There are going to be bumps in the road, and that was one of them.
Mitch, we'll wrap up some thoughts on Husker baseball. They open up the season this Friday. Sam Houston is on the schedule here and got a revamped rotation. Of course, Perry's going to get the nod. I know McCarville's a transfer from A&M. What do you anticipate from the Nebraska pitching staff based on what's back and what's new? What's a best case scenario? What's a real scenario for all the guys on the Hill this year for Nebraska?
Well, remember, if you go back to Will Bolt's playing years when Nebraska was at the peak of its baseball greatness, never even in those years do you come out in February as the team that you're going to be in May. And especially with a group like this that's replacing so much of its top-end talent, the outfield in particular and then on the mound. So, there are going to be some rough days probably here in February and into March, but the important thing is that you see their ceiling at times. I think they're going to play some good baseball because they've been able to be outside for practice much more regularly than what you normally get in the winter in Lincoln. And they're going to spend these first 3 weekends in Texas and work out some kinks. There's a lot of expectations for this team coming off a conference championship and with how close they came to making a super regional. And, I think sometimes people in Nebraska have a football mentality like every loss is a disaster. It's not in baseball. Sometimes losses help make you better down the road. That's why they play 50-some games. So I would be patient with this group. And, when they get into the Big Ten season is when you can expect them to get on a roll.
About 60 seconds. What is Rob Childress going to bring to Nebraska? What is his? We know his role, but what's it going to mean? How's it going to translate for these new kids?
Well, we'll see. I haven't talked to Rob since he's been back. I've talked very briefly to Will Bolt about it, and I know that Will says that Rob, when he's involved in something, he's all the way in. So he's bought in. I would expect in moments for this team where the pressure is on, and they get into the dog days of the season, and you're facing a must-win Sunday, or they get close to the postseason. That's when you're going to see Rob's influence come through because of all the experience that he has, having been in huge moments in the SEC and the Big 12. That'll rub off on the coaches, which will ultimately rub off on the players. And I think that you'll see them have an opportunity to step up in the moment and be clutch. That's what it's going to take for Nebraska to repeat as Big Ten champs, and more importantly, to win enough to have a home regional and have a chance to advance in the postseason. And that's where I think Coach Childress's value comes in, because he's been in those moments so often in his career.
Mitch, awesome stuff. Thanks for the time today. We'll check in next week. Appreciate you.
Okay, thanks, guys. Take care.
Hello, listener. This is Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price of $29.99. That means that you, for less than $20, get everything we produce: 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Coming up a few minutes with Andy Markowski. We'll check in, get his thoughts on the Husker women, some Husker basketball. Maryland, the Turtle, comes to town. We'll be down to the Single Barrel for that. Girls basketball tonight at the Nest. Southwest, Lincoln High, number 2 versus number 4. And we welcome in coach for Lincoln Southwest, Tim Barada, with us to preview the matchup and talk some girls basketball. Coach, thanks for the time. How you been?
Doing good. I was a little nervous after I saw the lineup, sticking me between Mitch Sherman and Andy Markowski. It's kind of like the third fiddle, but, that's how things go sometimes.
Coach, you can play the fiddle, though, bud. You're good at that.
Hey, thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll talk walleye in a minute, but I'm in all seriousness, what a ball game tonight with Lincoln High coming in. And tell us your team, a little bit about your team, Coach, and just specifically how you've kept growing and getting better and better. At 16-4, that's super impressive. And you guys have been through a lot this year.
Yeah, we continue to get healthy, and I still think we're playing. We haven't played our best basketball yet. If you think back to December, we did not have Mckenna Rathbun, did not have Alexa Goebel, who are 2 kids that are definitely in our rotation. They were coming back from injuries. We got Mckenna in late December, and we got Goebel in mid-January. We lose Taryn Lang at the end of December to a concussion. So you take all those things into consideration, and our kids have continued to grind things out and just do a lot of little things right to give us chances to win games and opportunities and things like that. So, we have good guard play with Kennedy Williams leading in the point, and she's trying to keep up pace with mom in the most wins in the household. So that's a battle of its own. But then we have Anaya Seymour, who's really been shooting the ball well lately, and then Mckenna Rathbun, now that she is fully healthy and back from injury. She's a kid that's going to go to Doane and play soccer, but really likes winning basketball games. So that's fun to have. Brinley Christensen is a kid that's really been a competitor for us. Does a lot of little things that don't show up, and Freddie Wallace has been our post that has been striving to be as consistent as possible and continues to do things for us, and will need to. And then you throw Alexa Goebel in there coming off the bench, and Lizzie Lesswing has been a pleasant surprise for us and has shot the ball well lately. So, our kids just like to compete and they like to defend, and you can vouch for that going back to the Central game that you guys did. They just like to compete and they like to play and make things hard for people.
Tim Barrett is with us on Hail Varsity Radio, head coach, Lincoln Southwest girls at 16-4 on the year. Lincoln High comes in. Coach, what are practices like, and how much fun is this group being around?
They're a blast. The best thing about coaching in general is I have really good kids to work with. And our girls are going to try whatever we ask them to do. Now, if you would turn around and go back to last Tuesday, they would probably beg to differ. We had one of our most competitive practices that we had since December. We had split our groups, and it was lose, you run, and it was we had kids competing to the point we had some blood, we had some sweat, we had some tears. But I do think that competitive practice helped us get over the hump on Friday when we win a double overtime game at East, a game that, we maybe could have won. We had the ball at the end of regulation and didn't, and then we were down 5. They're shooting free throw. We're down 5 with under a minute to go, and Kennedy bangs in a 3, and they make 1 of 2, and Anaya bangs in a 3, and all of a sudden we get a defensive stop, and we're going to another overtime. So, I think that portion of our practice last week carried us. We'd went about 2.5 weeks where we had been playing games because we missed a weekend because of health protocols, so we had to find a place to put a Fremont game on a Tuesday and a Gretna game on a Tuesday. So we played 6 games in 12 days, and Millard North kind of run roughshod over us in the fourth quarter of that game, and we let that one get away. So we kind of went back to the drawing board and said, well, let's just compete against each other. And then once we're done, we all flip back to the same color and put the same shirt on. And now our Wednesday, Thursday practice was back to basics. And I think that was a portion of that. Now, if we can get that to be a carryover into today, that would be great, because Lincoln High is so good. They're having the best year they've had in quite some time. Dominique has done such a good job with their kids and getting them to do the things that she wants them to do, and they really have some good players. I think Bree Robinson is a kid that really makes them go. And fun side story with her is I taught her in 5th grade when I was teaching up at Campbell, and she's just an awesome kid. But you throw her in, and Franklin leads them at about 15 a game, and Robinson's about 12-ish, and Wiley comes off the bench in the 12 range. So they have a 3-headed monster in the scoring, but they have a lot of other kids that do a lot of other things for them. And they're hard because they want to be able to drive it at you and try and get the ball to the rim, and they're really good at chasing offensive rebounds. And they've put together a string of some really good games. They have 2 losses. They got beat in the HAC after a 5-day break, and then Millard South beats them, who's, undefeated and the best team in the state right now. But Millard South, they were challenged by Lincoln High in the fourth quarter of that game, so that's probably the closest game that a Lincoln team has played Millard South. So Lincoln High went up to Fremont and got a win a week ago. So, they're riding high and are looking for big things. So we're going to do everything we can to try and slow things down as far as the momentum they have and, make it a basketball game where we control the tempo rather than them, and we got to be able to rebound. And if we can do those 2 things, then we have a game in the second half. And once you get to that point, who knows what can happen.
Tim Barrett is with us, head coach, Lincoln Southwest girls. They host Lincoln High tonight. We'll have that coverage around 7:20 on ESPN. Lincoln excited to be back at the Nest and also see what Coach Dominique's done with Lincoln High. You mentioned that Fremont game. That comeback was incredible in that venue on the road by the point differential. So 2 teams with a ton of momentum, Southwest and Lincoln High. Coach, about 30 seconds here. Home court and momentum. Students and, of course, the Southwest parents, pretty great atmosphere.
Yeah, we're looking for it to be a fun atmosphere for our kids. It's unfortunate because it's a COVID second year where our girls are playing at home and our boys are playing over at Lincoln High. But I think our students are on board to be there and make it a neat atmosphere for our kids. And we have great parents, so it's been fun for them to be able to enjoy the successes we had. And hopefully we can do enough things to give ourselves a chance tonight, and then ultimately set yourself up for a good seed in the district tournament and eventually find a way to be able to play at PBA at some point here come March.
Tim Barada, Coach, always appreciate you. Great to spend a few minutes with you. Take care, and we'll see you tonight.
Sounds good. Can't wait, Chris. Thank you.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Thanks to Tim Barada, head coach for Lincoln Southwest girls, previewing Lincoln High and Southwest tonight, 7:20 pregame locally here on ESPN Lincoln. Andy Markowski, Rick Kaczenski next hour. Boomer Esiason tomorrow. Excited to have and get his take. He's making a trip here for the 9th annual Team Jack Gala, and that's he's the keynote speaker, so it's going to be cool to have Boomer back in the state of Nebraska. Reminder about buckling up. 1 of every 3 fatal crashes in Nebraska involves an alcohol-impaired driver. Why take chances? If you drink, don't drive. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Well, a guy that would be pretty fun to go on a road trip with for extended time. Just think about going to Big Sky Country in Montana, or taking a trip to the eastern seaboard, or even heading on down to the bayou for some crawfish. Ed Orgeron made the rounds with Super Bowl Media Week on a lot of TV shows, a lot of radio shows. Dan Patrick able to run down Coach O. Maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't, but the mother of all recruiting stories. And let's set this up, Elijah. It's the story of the one that got away, and it was Adrian Peterson.
Who broke your heart? Is there one that stands out?
Oh, Adrian Peterson.
Oh,
man, I loved him. I loved Adrian.
Oklahoma offered a better package to him.
This is a true story. We go down to see Adrian, me and Pete, and his mother ran track at, I think it was at Houston. Wonderful lady. And Adrian and I had a great relationship. He loved Pete Carroll, but I felt like he and I were very tight. One time he says, Coach, I went to this school. He says, Coach, I want you to follow me. I couldn't drive with him. We went 30 miles. I said, I didn't know where we were going. We stopped at this little country store, and he bought a gingerbread cookie. I couldn't buy it for him for supper. And then we went to a basketball game. And we sat in the gym, and I said, what are we doing? He said, you see that guard right there? I got to play him next week. Coach, come and scout him. How about that? Then I said, well, Adrian, what is the key to getting you here at USC? He says, Coach, well, Bob Stoops, my dad is incarcerated. Bob Stoops won't see him. Well, me and Pete Carroll tried to go get him and to go see him. They wouldn't let us in. But Adrian said, Coach, my dad is be able to watch my games where he's at. Well, if I go to Oklahoma, I tried to get the guy transferred to Los Angeles.
Wait, you tried to get Adrian's dad?
Yeah, I tried.
That is up there with hotel rooms and coaches spending the night on the couch and the old dreaded state patrolman stalking out the county line or the state line between Georgia and South Carolina. But I had never heard of a coach trying to get a prisoner transferred from Oklahoma to California, all in the name of handoff to Adrian Peterson. Hour 2's on the way. Andy Markowski's next on Hail Varsity. Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
That's the sound of joy. The Husker women take down Indiana last night, 72-55, the old water bottle trick. It's not quite the ninth green at 9 trick. This is enjoyable. And Coach Williams celebrating with the Husker women as the Nebraska women's basketball team emphatic last night. A 17-0 run to give some breathing room in a tight ball game. We welcome in Husker standout Andy Markowski with us, assistant at the Pius girls basketball program as well, and proud papa of Alexis Markowski as well. Andy, what a ball game, what a scene last night. How are you?
Yeah, trying to recover. Certainly, emotional night. A great win for the women, and a win that really kind of cements them as an NCAA tournament team. They needed another good resume win, and they got one last night.
Tell me a little bit about what you've seen, the progression with the Husker women, Andy, as you've been up close and personal to it this season, and they have built. They have won the games they're supposed to win, but they've also come through with this core group of kids and some new faces, obviously, to take down some of the Big Ten giants. Tell me a little bit about why you see the progression happening like it has this year for the Husker women.
Well, they got off to a great start, right? I mean, they were 13-0. Had played a lot of players. Everybody was contributing, and then COVID hit them after kind of a start to the league where they had a really tough schedule and lost a couple close games to Iowa and Indiana and to Michigan State there, and they really haven't played their best basketball since that break. They had a couple injuries in that stretch, and I thought last night they looked a little bit more cohesive defensively. They were attached. They did a really nice job with the scouting report. They got production from, Izzy Bourne, Bella Cravens, the other two frontline players with Alexis. And then, I thought Shelley and Habe, play like veteran guards. And then Allison Widener is doing a lot of good things as a freshman as well. So they had, 5 players in double figures last night. And when they get that balance, I think they're going to be a hard team to beat the remainder of the season and into the postseason. But they still haven't, in my opinion, played their best basketball. There's times that 2 or 3 of them have good games, and then 2 or 3 of them aren't playing their best. So hopefully they can put it all together. And their schedule gets a little easier here. They're at Penn State, and they got some winnable games at home. So I think they could win 4, 5, 6 in a row here going into the Big Ten tournament. Which should make you feel good about yourself with a chance to make some noise in the postseason.
Yeah, you mentioned some winnable games at home, and I was going to ask you about the struggles on the road. It doesn't seem like this team is the same team on the road as they are at home. So is there something different with how PBA has installed the rims? Is there something different with that this year? Can you explain what's going on between the home and road split for the Husker women's team this year?
Yeah, I don't know if it's as much as Nebraska is. It's just a really hard league to win on the road. I mean, Michigan, just lost 2, at Northwestern this past week. I mean, you saw Nebraska handle Indiana, last night when Indiana's on the road. So I think it's a well-coached league. I think it's hard to go on the road and win. You've got to generate, you have to play well. You've got to generate your own energy. And Nebraska, I think, lacked, maybe some, cohesion to that stretch. Shelley was out at Iowa, which I think affected their energy and their opportunity to win some of those road games. But I don't think I think PBA is a special place. I think this group, loves to play at home, and the energy that the fans have, there's only been 400 to 4,500 fans there. But the people that are there want to be there, and the atmosphere has been fantastic. Hopefully, that can continue the remainder of the year. But it's just it's a tough league like it is in the men's side, and when you go on the road, you have to play your best basketball if you want a chance to win. And Nebraska hasn't played their best, and I think that's one of the reasons why they've lost. But the teams that they've lost to on the road have been top 25 teams, so it's not like those are easy venues to play.
Andy Markowski is with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Andy, you mentioned the balance, the 5 double-digit scores, the defensive intensity, the ability to shut down the three-point line, and also really own the paint. 2 for 23 for Indiana from 3 last night. I thought, what do you think this does? What do you think Nebraska does best right now as they're moving towards playing their best basketball? And follow that also with, give me a crop report right now with the Nebraska women from an NCAA seeding standpoint, overall Big Ten, and of course where you think Nebraska sits right now.
Yeah, I think our strength, and early in the year it was finesse. I mean, we were scoring 100 points in a lot of the non-conference games, just overpowering some non-conference opponents that weren't that good. But I think this team has become a pretty physical team. I look at our front line. You look at Jazz Shelley, averaging 7 or 8 rebounds a game, leading the team in block shots. Sam Hybe is a very physical, driver, penetrator, defender. Allison Widener has come in and offered a level of pace and physicality. So I think last night the difference in the game was, you spoke to it on the stat sheet that we not only defended the 3, but part of the reason why we defended the 3 is we guarded their ball screen really well, which took a level of physicality and togetherness. We're out rebounding most teams in the Big Ten. I think we might be behind Michigan is all. So that has allowed us to be competitive in most games, and I think you carry that into the postseason, Chris. If you look at the fans are all caught up in not being ranked in the top 25, even though you're 18 and 6 and have a 2 top 10 wins. But the NET, which is the measurement tool by the NCAA tournament, we're in the top 20. I think we're mid-30s for the RPI. So, that projects us anywhere from a 6 to an 8 seed. If you win 4 or 5 in a row here, you potentially could sneak onto the 5 line. I don't think we can be in the top 16 with women's basketball. The top 4 seeds of each, region gets the host. I mean, that would be incredible. You would have to probably, go on to a pretty good run in the Big Ten tournament. But, I think anywhere from a 6 to 8 or 9 seed, and, that gives you a chance to go and win a game. And from there, it comes down to matchups and different things to try to play the second weekend. But, the Big Ten tournament is going to be extremely challenging. Nebraska is looking anywhere from a 5 to a 7 seed in the Big Ten tournament. So that tells you how difficult the league is when you potentially are going to get a higher seed in the NCAA tournament than you are in your own Big Ten tournament with, Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa, Indiana, and Maryland all projected to be a top 5 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Andy Markowski is with us, Hail Varsity Radio, talking Husker women, and incredible win last night, pretty dominant against Indiana. Eddie, want to switch it over to the men, and did you get a chance to see much of, what took place in Iowa City?
Yeah, I caught the good and the bad of the last 2 games, and just highly, obviously I felt good for the players, last week getting a win, but the lack of maturity or how you handle that and being able to take, some of that momentum on the road, get dismantled by a good Iowa team, but not a great Iowa team, for them to, beat you by 30. It's certainly disappointing, and Iowa's becoming, I used to not view them as a rival, but the more they beat us in sports, I'm starting to not, enjoy that and then develop, kind of that emotion towards or against Iowa. So to do that, to not play well against a team that you should be motivated to play is just disappointing. And, it's, they have 4 or 5 more winnable games, I think, on their schedule in terms of bottom half of the league, but I just don't know what to expect out of this group.
You and me both, man. I mean, it's not that I was expecting them to go win at Iowa. The line was 16, and they were up. They started out well, and then it just all the wheels fell off, and it was 42-10. There's a spurt. It wasn't Northwestern bad from an effort standpoint, but, man, you just had some guys that have played a lot of basketball just really, really force things, and they were so out of control, Andy, with Nebraska's turnovers and just some aloof passes and just some tough shots. I mean, when it gets nitty-gritty time, Andy, they just kind of revert back to some bad habits, and that's, as Fred touched on, trying to get it all back at once.
Yeah, and the offense has certainly been frustrating, and sometimes young kids that are forcing, you haven't had consistent point guard play, but I'm more alarmed that, it's not easy to score 90 points in a basketball game, and we've given up, 90, half dozen times and have been embarrassed. I mean, I just, as a player, I've lost by 20, I've lost by 30 before. It can happen. But, to give up almost 100 points again, I'm more alarmed at just how easy, teams move the basketball and make shots, and us, not having the ability to just have any grit or offer any resistance defensively. I guess that's where I become the most frustrated, because just with some toughness and some effort, you should be able to get some stops, whether or not you can score every possession. This team obviously can't, but you should be able to string some stops in a row if you're playing hard. And, unfortunately this weekend they couldn't do that either.
Andy, I want to go back to your talking points with Iowa, and the more Nebraska lives in the Big Ten, the more it sucks to lose to those guys for Nebraska fans. Who did you dislike highly, is how I'll phrase it, in the old Big 12? And did you bridge Big 8 to Big 12, or were you just Big 12?
Yeah, I got a piece of both. I was Big 8 until 96 and then Big 12. Okay. And, so the history of the Big 12, the four Texas schools that came in, we didn't have a lot of history. Obviously, you didn't like Texas. We had played Texas in the non-conference, but it was so early in that rivalry. Really it was, you hated Kansas because they kicked their ass all the time. But the real, I always thought Missouri was, with Norm Stewart and kind of that phase. I mean, Danny had kind of owned Norm through the early 90s and the Antlers, which, if you ever want to have a bear sometime, I would love to tell people Antler stories that aren't appropriate on the phone. But that was probably the one rivalry that got a little nasty, and it's not football started to get a rivalry with Missouri a little bit thereafter as well, but from a basketball standpoint, Kansas State wasn't very good at the time, and we couldn't beat Kansas, so Missouri was a team that we were probably equal to during that stretch, and those were pretty fun games to be a part of.
Well, and I imagine it probably burned Norm to have Cookie and Ty Lue, two Mexico, Missouri kids, beating him.
Yeah, no, I think that, you make a great point. That added to that as well, because, that was a rival, or Toronto Cookie knew a lot of guys on the Missouri roster, right? So that aided a little bit of that competitiveness. But those were the games that stood out a little bit more than others to me. Well,
we will make it a podcast only. Sit down, and I'm buying the beer, and we will hear all about them Antlers. I know they kidnap's probably too strong a word, but I think they abducted Little Red and maybe deflated him during the 97 Missouri game.
I will give them credit. They knew more about our team than we knew about it, so their research committee was very good, and their execution of the things that they were doing. We landed. I don't know how much time we had. We landed. Columbia Airport's about 8 miles outside of town, and we landed on our charter and hop out, and there was about 50 bare butts staring at us on the fence line.
Really?
Welcome us into Columbia, and then they proceeded to get in their car and drive about 5 miles an hour. So it took us about an hour to get from the airport to our hotel as they were, hugging the road, I would say. So it was every time you went there, you knew it was going to be an event. But, I think they ultimately got kicked out of there in the late 90s. They were that rowdy where the school actually had to remove them from the arena. They could no longer call themselves Antlers. So that probably tells you that they went across the line a few times.
Just a touch. We'll have to continue this, Andy, as far as the Antlers and their reputation. They sound a lot like Belushi's crew from the Animal House. They were just good at being bad.
They took pride in their job. I'll put it that way.
Andy, we'll get caught up again. Thanks for making time this week with us, and best to you guys at Pius this week as well. And we'll talk again soon. Take care, bud.
All right. Thanks, fellas. Take care.
There he is. Andy Markowski, the pride of Ord, with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Yeah, the Antlers were nasty. And the Antlers, a few of them would make their way to the old Devaney Center. And they had intel. And when Nebraska was at the free throw line, they shared that intel.
See, this is in the age before social media, too. I feel like that's the way the modern student section gets their intel. They go to social media. But
this was knowing somebody who knows someone. Coach Kaz is next.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe. Promo code GBR.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time for a Tuesday with Kaz, Nebraska and Iowa. Kaz, what do you know? Do you got the football blues, brother? There's no football for a while now after the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I tell you what, Schmitty, really after the bowl season, I don't watch a whole lot of football unless it's somebody I coached or somebody I coached with or have some connection, and even then I'm not watching a whole lot. So this respect the hell of the NFL and the players, but NFL just doesn't do a whole lot for me. I can take it or leave it, to be honest with you. So the season ends for me after the college bowl season.
All right, fair enough.
But I watched it. I watched it. So I think I would have been the next guard in for the Bengals. I think I got a shot to make their roster if they keep the same 5 guys on their old line next year.
Well, as a defensive line coach, you had to be loving all the heat, the Aaron Donald production. As an offensive lineman back at Notre Dame, you're probably like maybe screaming at the TV based on how those things broke down.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's exactly why you got to have somebody opposite of a stud like Aaron Donald, and that's what they went and did in the offseason with Von Miller. And, they got a kid from South Carolina that's a rookie. They did a really good job, and that's so critical with the front office there. And, you just look at the Rams and you look at the Bengals, I think the Rams got a chance with their ownership and their front office to continue to stay there, or at least compete. The Stars got a line to get to a Super Bowl, let alone win one. But you look at the Rams. I think the Rams were $15 million under cap. I'm sorry, the Bengals are $15 million under cap. It's. Gosh dang! They just started to spend a little bit of money, but that's just not a franchise that understands that it's going to take money to win. So hopefully that's not the last you see of Joe Burrow in the Super Bowl. But man, I think it's going to be a lot harder for the Bengals to get there than the Rams. But man, I tell you, they did a great job in the front office with that defense. and putting guys around Aaron Donald, because when you got a guy like Sue or Donald, then you need more than one. You need a guy opposite, and any successful defensive line has that, and that's what you saw from the Rams.
Well, and think about the Rams. I mean, they went all in on a playoff run, 3-4 years ago? Well, 3 years ago when they went and got Sue as a free agent to pair with Donald. And, I mean, they just didn't have the quarterback. Stafford did enough. Cooper Kupp was good. Akers was nice. And the thing about Cincinnati, they have the fourth most amount of money to spend on free agents. I know historically speaking, their franchise, to put it nicely, has been thrifty. But through the draft, they got Chase, they got Burrow. Zach showed them something, and they did well with their free agent and kind of building their defense. That's what they invested in this last offseason. But it is just incredibly tough to no doubt get back to the Super Bowl. Rick Kaczenski's with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Kaz, our parent company, Hurrdat Media, does a ton of podcasts. One of the podcasts is Athletes Unfiltered, and that's Adrian Martinez's pod, and he had it last year, at Nebraska. The first new episode for the new season dropped, and he went into pretty graphic detail about his broken jaw, how the news of, and we all kind of thought it was busted, just based on what you see. And it's not that he was abnormal talking when you'd interview him, but you just could see, camera shots on the sideline, right? I mean, you just knew something was different after that shot he took against Michigan State that fractured his jaw. And he let loose today, just, talking pretty openly and honestly about what he went through with the broken jaw, the fact that, family members, his grandmother had to find out during the Big Noon Fox broadcast that, Adrian's playing with a broken jaw. And then it was kind of let out of the bag, so to speak, after the Ohio State game that, he does have a broken jaw. And just all that the guy went through to play last year for Nebraska, to go 3-9. Not on him, obviously. All of it on him, obviously. But that's a guy who's putting team first, man. Maybe a newfound respect by some Husker fans for him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the one thing that people can't question about Adrian is his toughness. The thing about the podcast or guys leaving, I just said it to somebody today. We had an employee leave, and some people were saying some things about him. I said, it's real easy to kill the dead, It's real easy to kill the dead. So, when you leave, when you part ways, best thing for anybody to say is just positive on both sides. Obviously when you have an injury, and you don't want your family to know, you don't want them to, you want to be the one to let them know. But too, no matter what the injury is, you're always thinking about your NFL stock, and how people view that on the next level. So I'm sure Adrian was thinking about that. But I mean, let's be honest, in this day and age, social media and the amount of people that are tied to the program now, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you had about 9 guys, and that's it. That's who knew what was going on. Now you got like 3 GAs, you got analysts, you got, people who hold the briefcase. You got these giant staffs, and it's just impossible for somebody not to say anything or things to get leaked. So, I'm not sure how that got leaked, but or who leaked it, but I'm sure multiple people are responsible for that. So I can understand Adrian being a little bit upset about that, But I think the people who know football respect Adrian and understood that he's a tough guy. Just like everything else in the world, 90% of the people are the folks that aren't on message boards and social media complaining and all that. So I think that's the sentiment of most of the Husker fans, at least the ones that I talk to, and the people I stay in touch with. And that's how Adrian was viewed across the league. You're always going to have the vocal minority bashing a guy, especially after he leaves. But but for Adrian, say, if I was giving advice to a young guy, hey, when you leave, just say something. Don't open the door for people.
Rick Kaczenski is with us. I want to go to Coach Holtz. Did he instill? I know that he was an incredible and is an incredible motivator. Just seeing some of his speeches and talking to him a few times in my career, just for events. He'd come to Omaha a handful of times for some fundraising stuff, so he'd get Coach Holtz on the show, and a couple of times during college football season when he was with ESPN. But was he just this little fearless guy that folks were scared of, or did guys look at his motivational tactics and respond more times than not? I know it's an individual basis, but let's talk about the persona of Coach Holtz, how you saw him when you came in, and you just told us how you feel about him now, but how did he kind of rule the roost? What was he like on the practice field?
Well, what he did, he put you in the toughest positions possible. He created adversity. He kept you on your toes. I mean, he always rode you until he thought that you figured it out, until you didn't need to be ridden anymore. And so he really made you uncomfortable. He made you understand it was a privilege, not a right, to play college football, and especially at a place like Notre Dame. I mean, you had to earn your stripes, and he put pressure on the upperclassmen to put pressure on the guys that were just coming into the program. So they understood the standard. They understood the responsibility, and those were the things that he constantly talked about, was the privilege that you had, and that how easily he could take it away if you didn't do what you were supposed to, but also the responsibility that you have for the guys that came before you, and to keep that tradition. But Coach Holtz was all about preparedness. I mean, so in toughness. I mean, gosh, we hit and we were tough, and man, we got after one another, and his job was to let us know, hey man, the game should be easier than practice. So he put pressure on us. He put pressure on us during the week. He was going to test your mettle, and there was nothing easy about it. There was nothing easy about it, and he got after you from start to finish. But he laid those expectations out, and what I liked about Coach Holtz was that you believed in his method, because all you had to do was look at his past. You had to look at his success, and all you had to do was look at these older guys and say, okay, this is why this guy's doing this. Okay, he's on you because he thinks you can be successful. What he's trying to do, he's trying to get you ready. All right, see what you think. It's not when you think you're ready, it's when he thinks you're ready. And what I'll say about Coach Holtz, once you earned your stripes with him, man, I mean, that dude was in your corner. And there's no way in hell I would have had the success on the field, and there's no way in hell that I would have been able to handle adversity in life if it wasn't for the lessons learned and the people that I was surrounded by at Notre Dame. I mean, when things hit the fan, I can call Coach Holtz has helped more guys after they're done playing for him than while they were playing for you. I can promise you that. He's not a guy that's good, just like Coach Osborne. He's not a guy that's going to call the newspaper and tell you everything that he's doing for former players. But what Coach Holtz has done for former players, and the help that guys like Coach Osborne and Coach Holtz do for guys that earn their stripes under them, it's just that's the greatest thing about those guys. And unfortunately, that's a dying breed. Those guys are dinosaurs. I don't think you have much of that anymore. I think that's gone away. in college football. It's definitely gone away in NFL football, and that's a shame. But yeah, man, it wasn't a whole lot of fun, Schmidt. There wasn't no transfer portal, and even if there was, I don't think my parents would have allowed me to do it.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcast is part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Rick Kaczenski's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. No, that's some good insight on your time and the method, right? Getting you to exhaust every ounce of mental and physical ability for Saturday. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say back then. I mean, a transfer was it was almost a failure. I mean, honestly, that's how you were viewed. I mean, transfers had black marks, man. You know, I mean, so, you know, people weren't taking transfers like they do now, and I know it's a completely different age, you know, but people didn't touch transfers. There's not too many, you know, you look at the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, you know, I bet you might be able to find maybe a handful of guys who transferred and had successful careers. It just wasn't something that happened back then.
Rick Kaczenski's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Kaz, I got quick last thought from you. And Ed Orgeron made the rounds with Super Bowl week and sat down with old Dan Patrick, and he had the whopper of a story trying to get Adrian Peterson's incarcerated father transferred from an Oklahoma prison to L.A. so he could watch him and they could land Adrian Peterson. You ever heard of anything like that, man?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, there was a lot that went on back in the day. Which, man, I'm part of back in the day now. That's what's scary. Yeah, I mean, there's, like I told you before, you know, some of the stories that Coach Ford tells, you know, about state troopers from Georgia not letting Herschel cross the state lines, and you know, the things that I mean, that's what South Carolina did for George Rogers. And George Rogers, an amazing man. I mean, one of the best guys I've ever met in my life. You know, I frequently see George, and you know, same thing. You know, his they did some things for his old man. You know, his old man was in prison, and you know, that was one of the things. South Carolina, I think South Carolina, you know, they got his old man to one of his games during his last year here on campus. And I'm sure back then they probably did a few other things before George got to campus. But yeah, I mean, it was, you know, I mean, we're dating ourselves, but that old Johnny Be Good, I mean, it was, you know, it was kind of like that. You know, on signing day, guys would hide guys out. I mean, schools would pick people up. They'd pick their girlfriends up, take them to, you know, locations where other coaches, because, you know, you could be in the kid's house on signing day back then. So, I mean, it would be really difficult for you to tell me a story in recruiting from days past that would shock me. I mean, it'd be really difficult to shock me with some of the things that went on and some of the things that you heard from back then. But so yeah, but that was pretty funny. I know you played that clip for me before the show. That's classic, you know. And Ed's one of those guys. Same thing. You need Ed Ogerons in football, man. I think you need characters. You need good guys. You need villains, man. You need Batmans, Robins, and you need some bad guys too. You need some jokers, and you need some personalities. But gosh, I mean, coaches now are held to the higher standard than our politicians in this day and age. So that kind of stripped some of the character away from these coaches, man. But yeah, that would have been a hell of a time to be recruiting and coaching and playing back in the 70s and 80s.
Good movie reference. Johnny Be Good. I talked my mother into taking me. I got a lecture on the way home because of the graphic nudity in Johnny Be Good. But it was worth it. Jennifer Tilly, Uma Thurman, Jim McMahon, Howard Cosell. Good pull there, man, on the movie reference.
Yeah, I tell you, I might have to pull that up here on Sunday night or something. I haven't seen it in a while, but yeah, it was crazy times, man. It was crazy times. So good players were making more than the assistant coaches, I guarantee, back in the 80s.
Well, the old parking lot told the story. How much the boosters love football.
Yeah.
Who was driving a better car, the I-back or the assistant coach?
Hey, Schmidt, let me tell you, the guys who were the worst about it were the ones that probably talked the most about it. I mean, against it, I mean,
sure.
Some of these guys, oh gosh, some of the biggest phonies. Unbelievable. So, guess I know a little bit too much about some of those guys. I won't mention any names on here.
Right, that's pretty good. Rick Kaczenski with us. Kaz, have a good rest of your week, man. It was fun to chat and talk some ball. We'll catch up next week. Thanks for the time, man.
All right, partner. I'll talk to you, man.
Stays with Kaz, Hail Varsity Radio. Good to hear from Kaz and get caught up that way. And the Johnny B. Good poll, mid to late 80s flick, Anthony Michael Hall. Elijah's staring at me, glazed over with the Johnny B. Good. Take it you haven't seen that.
I just had to look it up.
That sports flick.
Just had to look it up, and yeah, no, I actually haven't even heard of it. Good cast. The cast looks great.
Yeah, it didn't do so well in the box office, but it was solid. It was a great spoof on the Wild West and recruiting in the 80s. But, man, back then, I mean, you saw programs absolutely get hammered. A&M, 4 years probation, 2-year TV ban. SMU, of course, they went to the electric chair. Still haven't recovered. Oklahoma, Switzer had to resign. 2-year TV ban, 2-year bowl ban. Oklahoma State, 2-year TV ban, 2-year bowl ban. And that was like on the heels of their 10-2 season in '88. Barry won the Heisman, and Hartley Dykes was like the second coming of Irving Fryer, credible wide receiver. And who else got in trouble? It seemed like Florida, before Spurrier got there. Florida'd go 6-6. Emmitt Smith was their running back, and they couldn't catch a break. Southwest Conference always in trouble. And then their 4 power players moved to the Big 12 and took over. Quite interesting. We'll wind out a Tuesday. Tomorrow we are loaded up. Can't wait to talk to Mike Schuhart, get Shuey's take on the Waste Management Open and beer showers. Boomer Esiason, his thoughts on where the Bengals go next. What's realistic? Hail Varsity presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcasts are just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor. I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Tuesday, we are off to Lincoln Southwest. They host number 2 Lincoln High, Southwest number 4. Good stuff today from Coach Kaczenski. We heard from Andy Markowski, Tim Barada, head coach of Lincoln Southwest girls, and, of course, Mitch Sherman. We spent a lot of time on Adrian Martinez, his podcast, and that's obviously a Hurrdat Media Production, our parent company. They are what we do with Hail Varsity, and good stuff, good listen there. That's been getting lots of run, deservedly so today. Some reality podcasting right there from Adrian, just laying out his time. And I don't know if it changed your mind, if you're anti-Adrian, but the kid's been pretty upfront and honest. And obviously both parties have moved on. Nebraska football, Adrian Martinez down to Kansas State, but really good listen there and good stuff from them. So we got a pretty loaded basketball schedule tonight. We have the local setup with girls hoops, 2 versus 4, probably a PBA preview. You've got Kentucky. They are all the way up to number 4. The Cats and Cal have caught fire. They take on Tennessee tonight. And it's getting closer to March, man. We are going to be right there. Sparty's been reeling. They're at Penn State. Texas on the road at OU. Wisconsin got just slapped by Rutgers. They're trying to bounce back. Indiana's hunting for a bid. And then Minnesota's crawling into Ohio State tonight. Arkansas, how good was that scene last weekend or last week with the court storming? And I know that cost them a pretty penny down there at Bud Walton Arena. But they derailed Auburn. This time of year is so much fun because you ramp up to March Madness, and the Husker women, Elijah, giving Nebraska fans something to cheer about this time of year.
Yeah. It's been a while since we've got a chance to cheer on a Husker basketball team in the NCAA tournament. It looks like Huskers are on that path, so that makes things a lot more exciting. Was the last time when Nebraska played Baylor in the first round of the NCAA tournament, was that the last time either team made the tourney?
I think the women.
Did they make it one more time after that?
They were a 2 seed. Gosh, I think in 2009. Mm-hmm. I think. And then Coach Williams, our old buddy Kent, emails in the women projected as a 7 seed in Ames. So that's where Nebraska women are at, and Markowski nailed it. That 6 to 8 window right now. Maybe they can top out as a 5, but a lot of work left to do. But, yeah, Kennedy Williams will be a lot of fun to see tonight, sophomore guard for Southwest. She's incredibly talented. Lincoln High and Coach Dominique are super good. And we're just pleased as all get out to be able to go cover it tonight here on ESPN Lincoln. Make your appointment tomorrow, 4 o'clock, Hail Varsity Radio. Mike Babcock will be with us. We'll get things kicked off, though. An agent's perspective with NFL prospects. Craig Doman, JoJo's pops, an agent, going to be with us. And then Boomer Esiason tomorrow. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
A Hurrdat Media Production.